So everybody is here. Very good morning and welcome to this wonderful event with wonderful people.
Good morning, Dr. Zaidi. So nice,
I yeah,
I,
I
I'm
really
sure that it is going to be scintillating, vibrant, with such a
yes,
wonderful galaxy of the
yes,
people you have
and
chosen.
yes, and these awesome people in the awesome panel are going to really enlighten us on many issues today. And especially, we would like to welcome Andrew William Jr. because he is all the way from USA and he's doing wonderful activities there as part of UNGC. And we are really privileged to have Kamal sir today, Mr. Kamal Singh, the ED of UNGC. He is the head of India. So I'm really very thankful to him to spare his time. I understand he has so many webinars all the way back to back, pack up all the times whenever I talk to him. So he has somehow managed this 1 hour for us. It's really great. And then we have our awesome vice chancellor who has all good vision and he's a mission for wonderful education for the youth. About this, Dr. Swati is also there, and she's doing wonderful activities related to health. And you must have seen her on the TV every day. She's there. I say, there is no single day when we don't see her on the TV. And Ms. Suruchi Agarwal always an energetic person, and he gives good and positive vibration to me as a youth. And she was there in the one more panel, and Mr. Andrew is also there. He's doing, as I told you, wonderful activities in USA. He's part of many organizations in the world. So the actual aim of this webinar is to enlighten and ignite the youth about UN SDGs and these human rights as per United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So at the moment we are discussing the SDG number 3, good health and well-being. And the aim of Youth for Human Rights India is to make the youth advocates of peace and tolerance. I am running a campaign, peace and tolerance through human rights from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. And I'm sure we will be able to create peace and tolerance all over the world, including our country. So with these awesome dignitaries, I would like to first of all invite our prestigious person, Mr. Kamal Singh, to start his opening speech as a presentation, and he will also enlighten us about UNGC. So, sir, over to you.
Truly a pleasure and privilege to be here, and especially on the subject that we always champion in UN Global Compact, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the very fact, the topic that Dr. Zaidi has given us, it is equally important as far as India is concerned. And thank you, Dr. Zaidi, for having me here. As I come from UN Compact, most of you must be aware the Compact special in the in 2000, all of you know that late Kofi Annan felt that it is important to engage private sector, corporate sector in achieving the targets that we have got that time. We were talking about Millennium Goals, but now it is SDG. And it was felt by him and also by the people associated with this movement, all the UN arm, that yes, the corporate sector is one thing that we need to bring partnership. So since then, this movement has been evolving, and I'm happy to share with you the importance of UN Global Compact became much more deeper and important, significant, or relevant when in 2015 Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the United Nations. And one of the highlights of that UN SDGs was the Paris Climate Accord. And we felt that if we are not able to look after our own planet, how we are going to live in this world. So at that point of time, all countries at that point of time, 190 countries accepted. Now it is 195. This Paris Climate Accord, and India was one of the major contributor. And our government, led by Mr. Modi, pursued this agenda vigorously. And we have seen now Niti Aayog has been mandated to lead this SDG achievement of targets as far as government of India is concerned, along with the state government. From the UN agencies, while each agency has some SDG or the other to achieve, but UNGC is the only agency of United Nations which is responsible for articulating, championing or achieving SDG target through the help of corporate sector, what we call it private sector. So in India we have public sector, so we always say corporate sector, we cannot ignore the public sector. Having said that, we have been now doing work with the all UN agencies. My colleague Suruchi here, we had pleasure of working with her in the last few months, and especially on the business and human rights, she has been very active. And then we have started working with the state government. There are 6 states we have already covered where the state has aligned their developmental agenda with the SDGs agenda, and they are doing very well. And all the states now finally coming on board to align their all agenda of the development of the state with the sustainability. And you know, also know that the Niti Aayog, our policy think tank, has also been mandated to bring out the sustainable development metrics, the progress metrics of each state, and now it is available already on the website of Niti Aayog, which is the model agency that's take care of everything work towards achievement targets. And at the country level, each country has to also share their progress, how they are faring on these achievements of targets. And you'll be happy to know that India is presenting its second report on SDG targets on 13th of July in New York. And of course, it will be virtually this time because due to pandemic. I've been in touch with colleague Mr. Amitabh Kant and Sriyukta Samadar and Dr. Rajiv Kumar. We have prepared a report that is going to be presented. It will be interesting to see, for all of you to see this report, how India has fared in these SDG achievement targets. So now I come to specifically where we come in as a UN Global Compact. So we have a huge membership in India. We have got 500 companies so far signed up for being the signatory to SDG targets. And this number is increasing every day. And we hope to one day at least have 10,000 companies. Though the 10,000 companies today are the global company today have already embraced. And happy to see the companies now also aligning their business goals with the SDGs. Because business goals without SDG, if it is there, it has no relationship with what we always have been saying, people, profit, planet. So all these is 3 Ps will not be there when we don't look at what we need to do as a society as a whole. So there are some facts which I want to place before you. If you look at how India, to that extent, targets at least 400 million people have no basic health care and 40% lack social protection. You can imagine, but with Ayush coming on board, I'm sure this target will get further mitigated. More than 1.6 billion people live in fragile settings where protected crisis combined with weak national capacity to deliver basic health services present a significant challenge to global health. And also you will be knowing it that every 2 seconds someone aged 30 to 70 years dies prematurely from non-communicable diseases, that is cardiovascular disease, chronic respiratory disease, and diabetics or cancers. And in the last few years, great strides have been achieved in enhancing the safety of millions of citizens before the pandemic. Now, pandemic has made further our challenges more complex, and nonetheless, the further measures that India is now taking up will have to take. That I want to say that to eliminate the broad variety of the diseases that India is facing. The planet is now experiencing a global health problem that all of you fully are aware of this COVID-19, and that has caused human misery, destabilized the financial environment, and threatened the lives of billions of citizens across the globe. And recognizing this interdependence of health and development, because they are one related. If you have a development where there is no health of people, it has no relationship to live in this world. The SDG provides a very ambitious and comprehensive plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity, and for ending the injustice that underpin poor health and development outcomes. Many more efforts are needed to fully eradicate the wide range of diseases and address many different persistent and emerging health issues. And more specifically, if I look at the goal number SDG and other 17 sustainable development goals, SDGs are very ambitious and comprehensive action plan. These are the global goals, and they are recognize the independence of the health and development, and that aims to end and address the issues which underline poor health and development outcomes. SDG 3 also acts as essential target goals to achieve other SDG, including goals like gender equality and no poverty. So they're all interlinked, and also it has so much relationship with the human rights. So SDG are the result of most advisory and inclusive process in the history of United Nations based on international human rights, as Dr. Jadi mentioned, human rights law. The program provides an important perspective for the more advancement in the implementation without any prejudice. And I'll come to you a little later about how they play a very important role when we think about supply chain and responsible consumption. The promise and commitment to global sustainable development is a human rights agenda. It is a universal agenda compassing a foundation of fairness where there is injustice. Inclusion in defiance of exclusions, a commitment to universal application of global values. So it is very, very significant because no society can live if there are no equal rights, and no society can live if people do not feel equal responsibility. So it has a lot to do with making our society more joyful, happier, and also sustainable. Now I come to role of youth in promoting the sustainable development goals. Young people can contribute to their communities' resilience, deliver creative approaches, promote social transformation, and drive political change. And they are also agents of change who mobilize to achieve sustainable development goals that improve people's lives and the planet's safety. They play an important role both in implementing, tracking, and updating the agenda, as well as the holding government accountable. And in young people, when they get engaged with the law that we are now championing, results have been very, very encouraging and motivating. We have done several path-breaking activities with the business schools, with some of the school children. They have been literally better than, in fact, most of us who are little more senior in age, responding to such responsibility that we need to fulfill. So, in a nutshell, I would like to say, as individual contribution towards building a sustainable economy as well as a sustainable society, we all have to piece together, and that is why in all 17 so we are not going to achieve, and we have to inculcate more partnership. We have to increase more partnership so that everybody in this planet feel that yes, it is my responsibility, it is my right to live the way the planet has been made in terms of making all the obligations that is required to be more make it more happier. So it is important to understand that change start from you, because you means as an individual. Every person on this earth can contribute towards sustainable development by adapting and tweaking their lifestyle in very simple ways, and these include simple tasks to spreading awareness about these global issues to help build a sustainable society. So these are my opening remarks. I'm sure some of these you would have already know it, but I have to only tried to reinforce them. And if there is any question that will be there, I'll be more than happy to respond to
Yeah,
you.
thank you very much, sir. And definitely partnership among the people and among companies and organizations, it is very important, as the sustainable development goals are the goals, global goals. So everyone has to involve and do partnership wherever it is required to make this world a better place to live. And obviously, the relationship with human rights and sustainable development goals is very intact, because these two things are correlated always. So when there are good human rights safeguarding, and sustainable development goals will flourish like anything. So thank you very much, sir. You gave so much enlightening session, and about the UNGC background, how it has started with Kofi Annan remarks, and all those knowledgeable words which you have given. Thank you very much for that. I have a question for you, sir. A very simple question I want to ask. What are some simple ways that can help the masses to achieve SDGs and implement them as routine in their daily life? Because as a human being, as a layman, anyone can ask us, like we are a specialist, okay, what should we do? How we can contribute? So if you can guide them little bit in brief, so it will be great for the viewers.
Yeah, yeah. So to me, SDG starts from home, our home. The way we
Yes.
consume water, the way we consume energy, the way we use plastic for that matter, everything. Your house is itself is a laboratory of SDGs. There's so many things we do at home which has connection with this achievement of sustainable development goals. So my take on this will be to conserve water, energy, stop plastic, and segregation of the waste. What the especially food that we are wasting so much, and cleanliness and hygiene acknowledges the respect part of the nature, because we now have as a greedy human being started consuming more from the nature, and we have to conserve natural resources and use as much as that we need it, and that is also needed very optimally. And we need to also as a human being introspect, become aware, engage with others to drive SDG. We have to champion everywhere, in your family, in your relation, in your community, in your organizations, and then as a country or state, you champion it. I'm sure the everybody will then contribute towards achieving SDGs. And we also need to be flexible and adaptable, and learn from. I would say I learned from children and youngsters, because my experience of interacting with the young and children have been phenomenally very rewarding. Whenever we have seen something not being done as per the law, they have been the one who have been always questioning why we are not doing this way, which is so like we use our own water at home, tap water, and how much of that water we misuse. Is there any way we can conserve it? We can save that water. Or is there way, some way when there is no water, can we make it harvesting of the water? Can we make it that water reusable? So this is one simple thing. Can we use reusable? The now most of the companies are trying to industrial sector, not only using but conserving and also reusing that water for some other means. Same thing is about the energy. You have a room, and would you like to keep your bulb and your electricity on when you don't need it? So you have to save energy as well. You have to also use the method of solar energy. Now we are talking about renewable energy. Can we use that as compared to what energy that we are today using it, and that is so costly, and at the same time increasing the carbon footprints in our own life. So to me, the SDG is a philosophy of a self that we have to be very, very careful resources from whatever sources that we can think of, and we have to become optimal. Do you need that? Is that enough? Because most of the people, even hunger, if you look at, they're not even getting enough food, but by we wasting the food. So to that extent, we have to be responsible, we have to be future fit, we have to be sustainable, and that is the way the mindset that will come from everybody. If everybody thinks like the way, I'm sure the SDG will be achieved. So that's my take on achieving these targets. Over to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and giving your time, precious time. Now, I would like to invite our next guest, Dr. Swati Maheshwari, who has so humbly accepted my invitation and taken out time from her so much busy schedule. Thank you very much for being here, and you are most welcome. And please, over to you for your presentation.
So thank you so much. At the outset, I would like to thank
Yeah.
you, Dr. Zaidi. You're such a wonderful leader and a very dear friend. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here to present my thoughts, and a very good greetings and morning and evening to all the esteemed panelists who are here, and also to the wonderful audience across the globe. So a very warm greetings to all of you. Definitely, we are talking about here about SDG, and I would like to put the SDG perspective, pre-COVID and post-COVID as well, into the picture, because we all know that we are running through this COVID era right now. And so when we talk about a sustainable world, when we talk about reaching the economic, environmental, and the social goals, there's one very essential prerequisite to it, and that is the thriving and the healthy human population. And this is vice versa, I would say, because good health is essential to sustainable development as well. And the 2030 agenda, I would say, reflects the connectivity and also the complexity which is around the two of these. So even if we have a very, I think, a cursory glance at the figures pertaining to human health, it reveals a world where there are great inequalities. It results in, I would say, massive disparities when it comes to basic healthcare access, and where easily treatable diseases, still claim far many more lives in many corners of the world, I would still say. So now this recent outbreak of corona pandemic, it kind of reminds us that there are always such potential health risks, crises around the world for which probably we are not well equipped, and for which we need to prepare in all earnesty and with full commitment, I feel. So if we reflect back to the pre-COVID era, it's not that we have not achieved anything or nothing for that matter. So we have made major progress, I would say, in improving the health of millions of people, increasing life expectancy, decreasing maternal mortality rate, child mortality rate, fighting against communicable and non-communicable diseases. However, I would still say significant challenges remain. And if we look at it, then female across the globe still they lack access to sexual and reproductive healthcare services. Then we have thousands of HIV and AIDS which continue to occur every year. We have millions of adults and children, I would say, who continue to suffer from undernourishment every year. And also the global waste is kind of multiplying every year. And this all impacts the health of the human and our SDG 3, for that matter, the one that we are considering now. And also, I would say further to this, the economic integrity, the mobility, and the political instability, for that matter, kind of rise new health challenges, keep on emerging out of these. And now, at this kind of burdensome state of affairs, have been accentuated by COVID-19, for that matter, because if you look at the global impacts of COVID, then all the hard-earned gains of over the decades have been decimated by this COVID, for that matter, because now we have 106 million children who have been pushed into poverty because of COVID. Then we have around 1.5 billion youth and children who have been deprived of learning for that matter. Then additional 1.2 million under 5 children deaths that we'll be seeing in the coming next 6 months because of in access to the health services. Also, the wasting would increase. And then another, there are 117 million children in 37 countries which are not getting their life-saving measles vaccine, and millions of others who are not getting other life-saving vaccines like diphtheria, polio, and others and all. And not just this, if we look at the other various aspects of it, then we have this threatening to human rights. We have issues of reverse migration. We have lack of safety nets. We have compounding of the existing inequalities and gender inequalities, and all these directly or indirectly impact the SDG 3. Yes, I would say that we have seen Spanish flu, we have witnessed Black Death, we have witnessed 2 world wars, and we do have that human resilience which bounces back. But yet again, we have this opportunity now and the Herculean task upon us. I would say the first urgency is to set up a recovery plan, because all the governments across the world need to sit down and look as to what could be an urgent recovery plan, because the way we are sliding, the way we are derailing from the SDGs because of the COVID at present, we need to look at the situation right now, though we are fighting COVID at one end, but we need to focus our attention on these SDGs as well, because they are slipping away because of COVID, and we need a very concerted effort from all the stakeholders, I would say, at present. And if we start first, obviously, would be the government. So we need a very rapid and decisive actions by the government, and especially to support the most vulnerable through, I would say, broad and coordinated policies. So we all know that leaving no one behind, has been the route in the human rights-based approach to development, and also central to the action required to achieve SDGs. And for that matter, India has committed itself to achieving the SDGs by 2030, and also it very kind of has its commitment, I would say, to ensure that it endeavors will reach the furthest behind first. So, kind of encompassing and especially targeting the ones that have gone through absolute deprivation, or the ones who have had this relative disadvantage. So somewhere or the other, India, I would say, has done fairly well for that matter. And we have been delivering as well. If you look at the, I think, multidimensional poverty index, then we have been able to reduce it to 28% from 58%, which was there across in various decades. So we have been able to bring it down to 28%. Also, I would say that India has saved 271 million people from grips of poverty. Yes, we can say that this is just the beginning, and we definitely require bold, transformative steps, I would say, because where we are and where we plan to go, the aims that we have, we need very bold and transformative steps for that matter. And just to kind of put this in perspective, if we see the present COVID scenario, then I think we have a lot of learnings from this COVID pandemic as well. Going forward, first of all, we've had these task teams which have been going door to door and doing screenings and all and everything. I think these task teams can be leveraged for achieving the other SDGs as well that are there. So we could kind of utilize these task teams. Secondly, telemedicine, I feel, has, which really had shot itself in the arm, has come back into the picture again, and we have realized that this is one science and one effective tool which can help us reach the far and beyond and something. So we could capitalize on telemedicine even more now in achieving the other, especially SDG 3, because we have these essential healthcare services and all the other kind of services that could be kind of delivered through telemedicine, and we could bridge the gap that is there and help us achieve the SDGs a little faster than what the COVID has actually kind of bring in a lot of speed breakers for that matter. Also, I would say that we need to reverse the strategy. Earlier, the thirsty was going to the well, but now I think the well needs to go to the thirsty because of the COVID era, because people can't go and access these healthcare services. People can't go into the out. So probably like we are doing door-to-door screening, we need to bring in this concept back where the well goes to the thirsty. You go door to door, do vaccination, because children are getting deprived of their vaccination. Children are getting deprived of nutrition, which they used to get at school and all. So somewhere or the other, we need to find ways to reach back to them. If they can't come out, then we probably have to go where they are. So we kind of need to look at those, I think, policies, changes, and some steps, some bold steps probably, to help us achieve this. Also, I would say the private sector needs to kind of gear up and partner even more to develop the healthcare solutions that work for people, families, communities, nations. So they kind of need to gear up as well. And then small, medium, and large companies, I feel, need to kind of step in now, because we do have this Companies Act of 2013, which says that the large companies which have an INR turnover of more than 5 billion, or who have their net profits more than 10 billion, then they generally are, kind of here in India, they have to do corporate social responsibility on them, where they have to kind of contribute 2% of their average net profits of 3 years towards some social cause, be it hunger, education, or be it health, or whatever kind of, some kind of activity towards attainment of SDGs. So we kind of need to, I think the government needs to tighten the loop on these companies and see that they are not doing an eyewash, and they are actually delivering on these activities towards these SDGs. And somewhere or the other, I feel not just these big companies, even the small and the medium companies need to be given a task now, some kind of social responsibility. It could be in proportion to the kind of the profits that they have, the kind of the presence that they have, but some kind of social responsibility, I think, is time should be given and assigned to these medium and small companies as well, because a little drop in the ocean is essential, I think, now. And these companies can also be part of that drop. Even a little drops from these companies, I think, would make a huge change. So not just looking at CSR of companies which are large companies which have high net worth, but also to the medium and small companies, the government can send a feeler that you also need to contribute back to the society in proportion to what you're doing, obviously. But then, yes, they also, I think, need to kind of come back and give back to the society in some form or the other, because we are going through these trying times, and this is a different time altogether. We had never seen this earlier. Also, I feel all the countries and the regions, again, they need to collaborate with each other, because this is what COVID has taught us, that when you have a single enemy, then the countries can collaborate with each other, they can join hands, they can work in tandem, and all these SDGs, for that matter, are common enemies for all the countries. So we could collaborate even more. And because this COVID has really opened eyes, I would say, because never had we thought that world could collaborate like this, that the world and the different nations could join hands, could help each other. Because and now I think we should leverage more on this. We should see how the different nations with different capacities, with different strengths, how they can help each other to kind of achieve these SDGs. That's what I feel. And then, as Dr. Kamal Singh sir said, he said that, at individual level as well, I think people need to come forward. They need to kind of step in and see how they could contribute to SDGs, because it's not just the government and the organizations that would be doing. It has to be people at the end of the day as well, who need to step up and take a step forward towards SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swati. It was really awesome, and we got to know so many things. Yes, of course, no one has to live left behind. We have to take everybody on the board, and any change starts from within. So we have to start from ourselves first of all, and then obviously, this is really awesome that you told so many informative data which we were not aware of, and this is really awesome. And basically, so many things out of this COVID-19 we have learned to unlearn, so many things which we have really learned to unlearn. There are so many habits which we were not able to get rid of. Now we have got rid of those habits, and we are pro SDG now, better to contribute to the society. So that way it is awesome, and we should always be an example for the coming generation that yes, this was the greatest fight with the COVID virus, this and we have emerged like champions and defeated the virus. So this example we have to set to our new generations. So thank you very much. And I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us and to our viewers a few tips in brief that can reduce stress and panic during this global pandemic?
Yeah, sure. I think I'd like to focus on 3, 4 points for that. First,
Yeah.
I think first and foremost is to stay informed, because the rumors and the myths are traveling faster than the virus, I would say, and people get misguided. They get wrong information, and this leads to a lot of anxiety and panic for that matter. Because since, as you mentioned, that I'm there on the TV programs and I've been doing a lot of question and answer sessions with the people and all and everything. So this is from the experience that I'm saying that once people get to know the right information, once they know what to do and how to save themselves, I think they become much more empowered. Their confidence level goes up and their anxiety and panic goes down. So one is to stay informed and stay away from this fear mongering, stay away from these myths and rumors that float around, especially on social media and all. So kind of try and get your information from credible sources. Just to give a little small example, recently WHO said, after the 239 researchers sent an open letter to WHO that, okay, yes, COVID is airborne transmission as well. But there are lines between this to read. Now, people, this does not mean that if you stand in your terrace or you're in your balcony or you're cycling somewhere that you would catch corona, because generally people think this way now. When once they see, okay, WHO has said airborne, it means it's all around us now, and it's such a panic situation. But you need to understand, you need to get the right information. What does this airborne actually mean? How does it impact you? Is it really just around you, or is it in the closed spaces, or is it that you can save yourself from the mask? You can save yourself by social distancing. And also, one thing is to stay informed, to understand what the current scenario is and how you can kind of save yourself and the others. Second, I would say, is to train your mind. So, you need to do something or the other, be it yoga, be it meditation, be it breathing exercises, something or the other where you need to train your mind. We call this cognitive behavior therapy, where, the kind of negative thoughts that are there, we try and kind of decipher them, we try and kind to identify them, and then we try to turn them into a more positive and adaptive way so that they no longer are negative thoughts for you. So uh, cognitive behavior therapy is more of a medical term. So what I would say is just learn to train your mind to listen more to you than to others, because we generally tend to listen to others more than to ourselves. So kind of we need to do these exercises so that we are more analytical in our thoughts, and we can take better decisions in life. Third, definitely, you need to work on your immunity. So I would say inculcate good, healthy habits and good dietary habits for that matter. I think that would be very essential. And immunity is one word that has become synonymous with COVID now, I would say. Uh, Fourth, I would say, is look out for any depressive thoughts. So if you have any depressive thoughts, or if the whole scenario and the financial and the other, because this COVID has not just had kind of health effects, it has cascading effects on various other aspects, be it social, economic, and a lot of
Yes.
other aspects. So if any of those things is bothering you, if it is really taking a toll on you and you're feeling that you're getting depressed and all, then you could reach out to friends, you could reach out to other ways, you could reach out to psychologists, but don't give in. Don't give in. Kind of see how you can kind of create a meaningful purpose in life, and kind of see how you could move ahead. And the final thing that I would say is develop an altruistic approach. The moment you know that you're going to help others, because we all are struggling. It's not that we are not struggling. Everybody is struggling at a different level and all. But if you look at people who are struggling more than you, and a little, I think, a gesture of kindness and a little small steps from your side could mean a lifetime change for the others. And the kind of gratification that you get at the end of the day, and the kind of feeling that you get when you help others, I think it not just helps them, it helps yourself as well. It really boosts up your own confidence. You feel so much good and much better inside, I would say. So I think these are simple things that if we look at, then we can sail through this trying times and walk through this adversity and make ourselves more stronger and not given during these COVID times.
Yes, of course. We have to be really positive and always keep ourselves motivated and high esteem. And I'm sure we all can conquer this war. And now I would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Andrew William Jr. from USA. Welcome on this panel, and please over to you for your presentation.
Well, thank you, and warmest greetings and thanks to our esteemed host, moderator Dr. Ajaman Zaidi, founder of Holy Vision International and Youth for Human Rights India, as well as our distinguished panelists and international audience, addressing the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights and the Sustainable Development Goals. They're dealing with goal number 3, good health and well-being during this global COVID-19 pandemic. As indicated, I am president of 5 Points Youth Foundation in the United States and member of the United Nations Global Compact since 2014, when I launched a 2015 to 2020 Caring for Climate campaign component of the United Nations Global Compact. However, as Dr. Zaidi mentioned, I'm also a strategic alliance coordinator for over a half dozen NGOs around the world. We are collectively dedicated to expanding, stabilizing, and operationalizing United Nations Global Compact local network infrastructure to what we call globalize the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the Agenda 2063 made up by the African Union. During this particular time, this is the United Nations Decade of Action on the SDGs, as well as the first 10-year implementation plan of Agenda 2063 to build, maintain, manage, and grow a worldwide community resiliency network of climate-smart, safe, and prosperous communities and cities. So, however, Sustainable Development Goal number 3 is only one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that apply not just to the emerging and developing nations, but to developed countries as well, and the United States in particular, especially during this, what they call the 4th Industrial Revolution. This is also, as you know, 75th anniversary of the United Nations and 20th anniversary of the United Nations Global Compact, formally launched on July 26th of 2000, alongside the Millennium Development Goals, which are now the Sustainable Development Goals. Notwithstanding the fact that the current United States administration pulled our nation out of the Paris Climate Agreement that formed the strategic planning basis for the SDGs, and has recently defunded its contribution to the World Health Organization, whose definition of the SDG 3 is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. We, as community leaders and advocates, particularly as members of the United Nations Global Compact, throughout the country, are stepping up to tackle both biological and sociological catastrophes during this global reset. That is crucial, particularly for our youth, who make up the biggest demographic of our global population, and at one extreme, and the elderly, who seem to be most prone to the current pandemic sweeping the earth at the other end. And unfortunately, those most vulnerable to what's called comorbidities, or conditions that might be at an increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19, the demographic that I myself represent during this International Decade for People of African Descent. However, my contention is that we must revisit and apply the tools and resources already developed so to leave no one behind, with a new consciousness and awareness that personal good health and well-being, SDG number 3, is only relevant in the context of our societal good health and well-being, our environmental good health and well-being, and our spiritual health and well-being, guaranteed by the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The quality of health and how health is distributed among economic and social stratus in a society can provide insight into the level of development within that society. Health is a basic human right and human need, and all human rights are interconnected. Thus, health must be discussed along with all the other basic human rights. In that regard, from a United States perspective, the Los Angeles Times reported on July 10th that 76% of those who died of COVID-19 had at least one underlying medical condition. That was especially true among the younger victims. 83% of those younger than 65 had at least one health problem before coronavirus came along. COVID-19 also in the United States claims the lives of Black and Latino Americans earlier than whites. Among a group of more than 10,000 people who had died of COVID-19 in the US in the early months of the outbreak, the typical white victim was 10 years older than the typical Latino victim. He was also 9 years older than the typical non-white, non-Latino victim, a category dominated by Black Americans. However, these findings are based on data from the health departments of only 15 states and New York City and may not reflect the true extent of racial disparities across this country. That brings us to the other demographic I represent, my First Nations American heritage. The COVID-19 pandemic's disproportionate and devastating harm to First Nation and Alaska Natives communities is a direct and damning consequence of the U.S. government's failure to uphold its legal trust and treaty obligations to the First Nations. Currently, the Navajo Nation has the highest infection rate in the country, greater than that of the worst hit state, New York. It's even greater than that of Wuhan at the height of the outbreak in China. Native people make up only about 1/10 of New Mexico's population, but more than 55% of its coronavirus cases. In Wyoming, Native Americans, people are less than 3% of the state population, but make up more than 33% of its cases. This crisis and the underlying conditions tribal communities face are the result of centuries of colonial violence that neglect continue to this day. Limited health services, broken infrastructure, and above average rates of immune compromising diseases all increase the vulnerability of Native American populations to the outbreak. In addition, many tribes also face the brunt of the economic downturn as their lifeblood enterprises in gaming and hospitality are closed for business during the pandemic. Casino closures in early March led to an estimated loss of more than $4.4 billion in economic activity, $997 million in lost wages, and the almost total drying up of business revenue dependent tribal budgets. Tribal gaming revenues are equivalent to state tax revenues, and federal law requires tribes to use these funds to fund government operations and programs. These losses have impaired tribes' abilities to provide essential governmental services such as healthcare, education, and public safety at a time where the need is greatest. To bring us up to date, according to the Washington Post, just 4 hours ago, coronavirus death toll in the United States increases as the hospitals and hotspot states are overwhelmed. The daily coronavirus death toll in the United States increased this week after months of decline as hospitals and hotspots in states were overwhelmed with new patients. The U.S. reported its highest single day infections, more than 67,000 cases on Thursday. To me, that's just yesterday. And the United States reported more than 4,200 deaths in the past 7 days. And experts warn that the trend could continue to grow worse. More than 131,000 people have died of coronavirus in the United States since the pandemic began, and more than 3.1 million confirmed cases have been reported. Now, more than ever, we need to develop, establish, activate, mobilize, and institutionalize interfaith, neighborhood, and business collaboratives through the United Nations Global Compact local network infrastructure to achieve the 2020 through 2030 decade of action on the SDGs as a living legacy to Kofi Annan's vision. Thank you very much.
Yes, inshallah, we will definitely conquer that. And what we have planned as SDGs, and we are going to achieve this goal 2030. And we also pray to God that US is having better situation as concerned to the COVID-19. And I'm sure we all together as a world community will fight with it and we will conquer the war. So thank you very much, Mr. Andrew William Jr. And I have a question for you. As the head of your organization, what measures have you taken to help communities in their fight against COVID-19?
Well, first you have to understand that locally, the Five Points Youth Foundation, we moved into what is tagged as Death Alley by the Los Angeles Times in 2014 for the community where the decades-long highest murder rates in the entire county of over 11 million people, and also ground zero for the 1992 Rodney King riots. We moved here in 2012 only to find the same appalling conditions that were precipitated by the 1980s crack wars that ravaged South Central Los Angeles and other urban cities worldwide. What our foundation has been doing since the outbreak is to coordinate drive-through food giveaways at our location to an area known as a food desert with the highest rates of obesity, diabetes, and comorbidity conditions throughout the 95 city council districts. In addition, we have a walk-up organic food truck vending service in our parking lot in an area where most restaurants have been closed for months, except for drive-through service. However, my foundation's work is not limited to Los Angeles. We have attracted and recruited an ad hoc international advisory board of goodwill ambassadors, such as our own Dr. Zaidi here in India, whose tireless work improved thousands of lives, but also here throughout the United States and other countries. During the first surge of the coronavirus that forced worldwide lockdowns, including in Nigeria, where our goodwill ambassador Shola Agboola had been traveling as president of the Nigerian Association for Young Adults of Canada and the USA. During his enforced stay, he began donating COVID-19 relief food packages throughout villages to the widowed elders, orphans, youth, and general population. He went on to launch the Saga Foundation, which had its grand opening on June 23rd, to provide a permanent base for our ad hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors to continue to work throughout his return to focus on 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals: eliminating poverty, good health and well-being, ensuring quality education, and decent work and economic growth. These things are relatively important to this group of people now because Africa is the continent that has the least number of United Nations Global Compact's local networks, but it's also shown to be the continent where there will be the most deaths from adverse climate change over the next decade. So we have another global media ambassador, Lady Alicia Hamilton. She's the CEO of PRN.TV, Revelation Network. It's a broadcast platform, and she and I partner with the Ed Food Foundation, CEO Sheldon Williams, in support of an online forum to address localizing the Sustainable Development Goals throughout the African diaspora through this 2015 to 2024 UN Decade for People of African Descent, in collaboration with the Maori tribe in New Zealand and the Universal Hip Hop Museum to reach our youth. We have Princess Seppi Motlong in South Africa. She conducts monthly food distributions to women farmers throughout rural South Africa, along with providing women entrepreneurship and empowerment programs. Anika Best, Queen of the Drums, representing Barbados, Bermuda, and indigenous people worldwide, conduct a worldwide drum circle for peace to bring edutainment to stay-at-home families. Ambassador Chaplain James Mercy Obantumibi, his World Humanitarian Organization for Peace and Equity, partnered with Save Africa to conduct an online forum addressing gender violence causes and solutions during this COVID-19 crisis. One other final person is our Global Health Ambassador, Dr. Don Doty, based in Chicago, Illinois. He's the founder and executive director of the Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health. He has devised a COVID-19 education and community service program for 2020. Finally, Ambassador Nina Womack and Queen Teresa King here in Los Angeles have been conducting daily food giveaways throughout South Los Angeles and surrounding communities hardest hit by unemployment on top of the COVID-19 restrictions. That's what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That's really awesome. Wonderful services you are providing to the society and communities there in USA. So congratulations for that. And without wasting any further time, because we are running short of time, so I would like to invite Ms. Ruchi Agarwal. Please, your presentation.
Thank you so much. A very good morning, a good afternoon, and good evening to everyone because it's a global platform. So I thought I'll wish you all throughout the day. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Arjuman Seti, for organizing this panel discussion. It's really a privilege to be with such eminent, to be on this virtual dais with such eminent panelists, and a very big thank you to our global audience who has been listening to us all this while. When I heard about this discussion and that the topic is on SDG Goal 3, the immediate thing that came to my mind, and I'm sure that it came to the mind of all of us, was coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, and how it has been impacting the global health systems. It has actually, at the same time, also exposed the inherent weaknesses of our preparedness and response to the pandemic. So it's not just about how we are dealing with it, but it is also about our health systems, how they are being able to respond to this particular pandemic. And as Dr. Swati has already said, that this is not the first pandemic that this world is facing. We have already seen a lot of pandemics that have happened, but it is certainly not even the last pandemic that we are facing. The world might be savagely hit by many more such pandemics.
Yeah, true.
And like what they actually evoke is like they actually call for nationwide focused response. And it is during such periods, during such pandemics, that we realize that other services, including provisions for healthcare, provisions for basic necessities, provision for social services, are also neglected. These are actually a time of test for our structure and the competence of our systems. Yet, what we have seen, like almost all the time, that the post-pandemic phase sees recovery for economic activities, not strengthening the health systems. It's actually an irony and it's a pity that each time we face a pandemic, we again focus back on economic restoration. We focus back on bringing life back to the path, but we don't focus on strengthening our health systems so that we are better prepared, we are better resilient to deal with such sort of pandemics in the future. The last 2 decades of this millennium, we have seen SARS, we have seen MERS, we have seen H1N1 influenza. And there is actually a need to reiterate the lessons that we have learned from these pandemics. We should not forget those lessons, and we should like etch them on our memories, that we how to deal with these pandemics so that we may be more resilient in the future, so that we have a more so that our actions, so that our words are actually translated into actions, and we are more sustainable on an all-time basis. Our priorities because of the COVID-19 pandemic has actually shifted. So we see that our health systems are actually quite overwhelmed by the number of patients that are visiting these systems each and every day. And this has also actually restricted their capacity to provide services that they should have been extending to the community in the normal times. So these hospitals, why they are overwhelmed with COVID-19 patients, how are they actually dealing with patients who have acute or chronic ailments, or people who have been trying to access standard routine care, something related to institutional deliveries, care of mother, care of babies, providing vaccination, routine immunization, dealing with malnutrition, dealing with infectious diseases. Now we have autumn in India, autumn coming back. So how are we dealing with vector-borne diseases? How are we promoting health, general health and well-being? How are we managing acute and chronic diseases who have been there all this while, even when COVID pandemic was not there at all? So alongside the devastating health effects of COVID-19, we are also seeing socioeconomic assessments of which has actually impacted the most to the poorest and the most vulnerable. They have been the hardest hit. And because the world, like we have already seen an unsustainable trajectory, rampant inequalities, accelerating climate crisis, and now this COVID pandemic, like we have gone a step beyond a step further, where we were, like, we were trying to accelerate the progress of SDGs. We were at a stage when the world was speaking about SDGs, but now how we have actually hit the entire ecosystem, and what sort of response mechanism do we actually need to address that. Coronavirus is just one deadly threat among many others that we are facing. It cautions us against a singular focus on COVID 19. We need not have a very narrow lens to deal with it. It could reduce our ability to respond. It could narrow down our health systems to respond to other conditions that are killing people on a daily basis. It actually, like, this particular pandemic is actually giving us an opportunity uh, to basically respond to short-term measures to close the coverage gaps. So what I particularly feel that we need to bring back a more resilient, more supportive public healthcare system, where we are able to also prevent poverty, also promote human rights, also promote health and social security. uh, Learning from this particular pandemic, as well as accumulating experiences from the previous pandemics that we have already seen, we should actually be more prepared. We should actually be more resilient to developing a pandemic preparedness and response plan, which is actually the need of the hour, so that our remaining health services are not disrupted, so that the people don't face everyday problems that we see every day in the news that people are facing. It's not just COVID-19, it's not just diseases that, like, the sort of health like less of mobility, less of accessibility that we are facing because of COVID-19, but it's also about our routine health services that we are always trying to look out for. So I think there is a need for greater financial investment, not just by an individual or by a particular health system, but by countries together, so that we can reinvent and reinvigorate the health systems and use this COVID-19 as a good opportunity to improve access, to improve the quality, to improve the safety of health systems, and promote factors that promote healthy lifestyles in the days to come. That's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. You are very true. And this is 100% correct that we have to really reframe the policies of healthcare, and we have to restructure the healthcare system in all the countries, including India. So let's together to reframe everything and make this world a better place to live and more healthier place to live.
Yeah.
And obviously, SDGs are to be, taken care of from each and every person. And also we have to ignite young minds. That's very, very important that we really ignite the young minds, as I have
Mhm.
already discussed in my other webinars, that I have last year approached to 1 million people, and I have made them aware about SDGs and human rights, and I am meeting many students. And one witness is here as Vice Chancellor of DIT University. We have given a workshop in his university and ignited his students. So that way, I mean, our contribution is to cover more and more people and tell them to follow the rules of human rights, and also they should adopt and should be strive to achieve the sustainable development goals. So thank you very much, Ms. Agarwal. And I have a question for you. The current global pandemic has resulted in huge loss of lives and livelihoods. People have been impacted. These are the humanitarian crises rather than just the health crisis. How has this impacted the SDGs?
Sure. Thank you so much for this question. In fact, I see a lot of ignited minds and souls in this panel discussion, and I'm sure you have done a lot. I have been a part of your journey, like,
Yes, yes.
for some time.
Yes,
So I'm
she's so
really
humble. Whenever I invite her for any of the programs or events, she's there without any of these things. That way, I am very much privileged, and I'm lucky that God has gifted me that thing that I am inviting anyone is so humbly accepting my invitation. Like we have an example of DIT University Vice Chancellor also. One day before, I have told him, and he agreed. So nice of you, sir. So thank you very much. Yeah, go
it's
ahead.
actually the common cause that's pulling us all together. It's
Yeah,
that
yeah,
magnetism
yeah. True,
of the common
true,
cause. Like, coming
true,
back to
true.
the question, I totally agree with you. SDGs have been really impacted. In fact, what, as I've already said, that COVID-19 pandemic is not just a global health crisis; it's a humanitarian crisis, and it has actually come at a time when SDGs were getting a lot of traction, not just from one or two countries, but a significant number of countries, and we were actually making a very good progress in the implementation of SDGs. But as the world is seized with containing the spread of the virus, and we are addressing the negative and the debilitating impacts, the reality is that now countries are resetting their priorities. They are reallocating their resources to deal with this particular pandemic. The response to this pandemic cannot be delinked from actions on SDGs. In fact, what we have seen is more than a third of the world's population was under lockdown in the month of April, and since then till date we are seeing a lot of countries are still under lockdown, either in a phased manner or maybe entirely under lockdown to deal with the pandemic. And as a result, what we have seen is many economic activities were shut down. It has led to massive loss to economy and massive loss to jobs. Maximum impact has been actually to the vulnerable groups. It has negatively impacted several SDG goals. To talk about SDG goal number one on poverty, two on zero hunger. Of course, SDG 3 on good health and well-being has a direct impact on because of COVID-19. Then we have seen debilitating impacts on SDG 8 on decent work, economic growth, on SDG 10 on reducing inequalities. In fact, I would say the entire ecosystem, the health, economic, and social crisis that has been triggered by this particular pandemic, it actually calls for an increased international collaboration and solidarity to support the most vulnerable countries. The most vulnerable first, because they have even lesser resilient health systems, lesser resilient infrastructure to deal with this particular pandemic. We are at the moment in 2020, which is just a decade away from the attainment of SDGs 2030 SDG target. While some of the gains on SDGs have been completely eroded, because we have seen a lot of impact on gender front as well. There have been escalated cases related to gender-based violence. In fact, the entire system is being crashed because of this COVID crisis. And some of these even though we are seeing such sort of systems, this should not deflate our efforts. We should try to come back to the path. We should rather spur us to accelerate and deepen our efforts. This is the decade of action for SDGs, and we should actually focus on recovering better, on building a healthier, safer, a fairer, and more prosperous world, so that we are more prepared for such future pandemics. Because these pandemics are here to stay, we need to be better prepared for them.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Thank you so much, and this was really enlightening session. And congratulations, and thank you so much. And we
Thank,
look forward to have you again all the
thank you so
times.
much. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
So
Thanks a lot.
yeah. So now, sir, for you, it is your presentation, and Dr. K. Rana is the Vice Chancellor of DIT University in Dehradun. This is one of the very prestigious universities of our country, and I have visited, and I am really impressed to see the students' quality and all other infrastructure facilities which I have seen over there. And he is a very nice gentleman from Kashmir, and he has been awarded on various national and international forums, and he is doing a lot of good work in his university academically. So over to you, sir. Please, your presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zadi. Great pleasure indeed. Like Suruchi said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and I think I would add good night too, because that's how the planetary motions do happen. It's a pleasure indeed, and Dr. Zadi, when you just gave me a call that you wanted me to be on this platform, I would say I deem it a privilege and an honor to get associated with the global community, in the sense that when we are in the crisis moment, everyone, we make friends in the happier moments, but when it comes to the crisis, and that too global, I think it is a responsibility, and each one of us must work together to see that how we can save the lives. One of the important facts, in my lifetime span, which goes to around more than 6 decades, I would say that it is for the first time I have seen that the global community is one. Getting some education overseas, I'm sure that Andrew will agree with me and the panelists is here too. We had divided the world on first world, second world, third world. But I think the corona brought all the worlds together, and that is what I personally feel that we all need to work together. Suruchi rightly said, this is not going to be the last one. I think there may be many, many more. We always quote 1918 epidemic and the Spanish agreement and all that. See, therefore, that is how the evolution happens. If we go back to the human race, I believe, starting from the Stone Age, I'm sure that the humanity must have been facing a lot many crises from time to time. And in our lifetime, I think it is the corona which we thought is one of the biggest, dreadest one. How to work on it? I, being the last speaker in this panel, I will not like to repeat the data. I would not like to say so. But some of the experiences that where the youth need to be associated with the change agents as the catalysts. I think one of the panelists during her presentation said it is the responsibility of each one of us, and we need to collaborate, we need to cooperate. Now, how can this collaboration happen? How can this cooperation happen? I think that is where we need to bridge the gap. And this sustainability model 3, where we are working on and discussing, I'm sure that it must at the global level, let us create certain teams from the universities, from institutions which are settled at the school level, and also the premier institutions globally. In the last, about 3 months or so, I have attended and participated in so many webinars. And at the fag end, we see that this webinar was for an hour, and thereafter we are what we are and what we were. How can we make a difference felt? You see, this SDGs 3, which primarily focuses on the health and the well-being. I go back to my school where we were taught that good health is a sign of good mind. I think today we are concerned about health, and Dr. Swati said mind too, the stresses and all those. And the more the number of channels we watch at home when we go to home after our office hours, it is more and more disturbing. Because each channel speaks about data, each channel speaks about the medication, each channel shows certain pictures. I think because we come out of the homes and we get relaxed outside, but those who are in homes, even working from home, are really in great stresses. So I would say that as a university, we have taken a couple of initiatives at our student level too. You very well know, madam, that we have been actively participating in so many such schemes and teams where public awareness is very much needed. As a part of early warning system, I think that has to be a globally acknowledged one. We get aware when there's a disaster, how to mitigate the disaster. I think we rarely look at all those parameters, we look at those aspects. I think there's a great need, we as a global community, under the auspices of the United Nations, human rights, and you being one of our most eminent and most respected persons associated, I think we can take those initiatives, not only my university and other institutions too. Here I would also like to add, madam, that when we look at the universities, I think there is still a level of maturity in the students, the youth. But sometimes I personally feel concerned. I would like to share and on this platform that those schools which are in the areas where there is hardly an awareness about the public health, who are giving them the knowledge about it. At the same time, we have gone on. So, 5 of us are at different 5 locations, and what connected us is the ICT, information and communication technology. The biggest worry that the education system faces today is how we can keep students engaged. Are we addressing the student groups in those schools I don't want to use the word slums, but I think this country has so many such institutions too, where probably the public awareness is not there. What are these kids doing? To me, they are not only the future of the nation, India. I think they are the global citizens because that is how in India we always have been saying and reiterating, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. If that is the true strength of it, true meaning of it, I think we need to work as a sustainability model that whether this school is in Africa, whether it is in America, whether it is in Australia, whether it is in Asia, or any of the continents, who is reaching them? We are privileged ones, we do talk. So I think for that, we have taken a couple of initiatives at DIT University, primarily we being the technology institution. But I think this technology has also put us in many, many challenging modes. We initiated certain programs like public health informatics in collaboration with the City University of New York, because this country has lot much of data, lot much, but where the data is stored, on which hard disk is it, who is analyzing it, and how to interpret that. So based on that, I think we need to analyze age segment, the background segment of the people, and what their ideas are. No one is interacting with them, and this is also a very big population. When we look at the global community, I think with about 7 billion population, if one-third population is unaware of all these good things that we do at the global platform, I'm sure that we are missing something in our dealings. Second aspect, my suggestion to Dr. Zadi as well as to Dr. Williams and to Dr. Kamal Singh is, since United Nations is celebrating the 75th anniversary, I think this is the most apt time. We talk of silver jubilee, golden jubilee, platinum jubilees, and all that. Why can't all of us work together for betterment of this planet? Whether it is environment, whether it is the carbon emission, or whether it is providing the technology tools, I think the planet is rich enough to redistribute the money so that it goes to the segments where all these underprivileged people whom we call that they are not privileged ones, can we give it to them so that there is going to be a upliftment of society? I think if we can bring in the awareness into the masses, this 20-25% population global impact, I'm sure that this world is going to be a wonderful place to live. Globally, it's my personal view, not I'm not speaking on behalf of the university. I think we have invested a lot in arms and ammunition, not knowing that COVID and what next is going to be. Whether it is US, whether it is China, whether it is India or any other or any other continent, we had to do certain exigency measures to make camp hospitals, which that means I think we were still we were not sufficient in providing the health care to the larger segment of our own people, our own population. Based on that, I would say if some money can be diverted by the global, which are highly influential as well as the affluent societies, to this segment, make good schools. There has to be health center. US has a very good health model. I was in Italy. It is really a surprise that Italy had so many deaths. One of the best healthcare systems on this planet. And India, I need to not tell to this audience that where we are and where we should be. There's a long way to go, Dr. Zadi. I am sure that with your efforts and the efforts of the United Nations as a whole, India has to play a very, very important role. And we, the people, are always with the United Nations for betterment of the community, betterment of the society. And education institutions are which are the nurseries for creativity. They are the nurseries for creating good human beings. And Government of India, under the Ministry of Niti Aayog Planning Commission earlier, has constituted various segments of helping the society. But I think awareness is first and the foremost thing which needs to
Yes,
be brought into the global community.
that's right, sir. That's awesome what you said. We should start working for that. And as we already are working with the government schools, with underprivileged schools and shelter homes and all those people, we are already working. But yes, definitely we have to leave no one behind, and we should forward our mission And I'm sure we'll collaborate with you and many other universities and like-minded people. I have a small question, and please answer it very briefly because Kamal sir and Swati ji have to go for some other program. After this question, Kamal sir, you have to give the closing remark and then we will finish up the panel. Sir, the question is, as since you are the Vice Chancellor of the DIT University, what are some of the measures being taken to ensure the health and safety of students and staff related to the pandemic at this university campus?
Madam, we have taken all precautions, in the mid-March, when the Janta curfew in this country was announced, followed by the lockdown and the lock-up. I think in all these measures, we took all the measures which were recommended by the Ministry of Home Affairs from time to time, and sanitization tunnels, as well as putting all those which are the high sensitive areas where there is more student population, which are prone to such things. We have cleaned all those, and you have seen our campus. It is one of the best environmentally well reached. You have seen my office too, madam. I think from my office, I have the overview of the campus, not with CCTV only, but the overview. I think we are taking all measures. And in addition to that, we have also asked our students, to go to the various nearby villages, because there was a lot of talk about CSR, corporate social responsibilities. I think it has to come from the school itself, not only from the university level. I think we have gone to various schools, sanitized those areas, went to the villages, and brought awareness. We published a couple of pamphlets in Hindi, the local language of the Dehradun, and also asked some of our own alumni, because institution is closed because our class is not suspended, but our alums who are in the close by vicinity, through their support, we have helped the people. It is not right to say that we provide them food, because food is provided by God. But whatever little we could do for those migrants who were traveling from one place to another place, I would say that whatever little God has given us, gifted us, we try to give it back to the society. But yes, not the end. There is long lot which we can further do. One at the end, I would say that the lady who comes our home for help, I'm concerned about her children. My children use online mode to their office work from home, but she doesn't have a hardware, she doesn't have an internet connectivity. How are her children going to grow in this situation? My appeal to United Nations with the offices of each one of you is, can we do something? And I'm sure, yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody, for giving so much time out of your precious time and busy schedule. And I would now request Kamal sir to give his closing remarks, please. Sir, we are not, you're not audible.
Sir, please unmute, Mr. Kamal Singh, please unmute your mic.
Now it's okay.
Sure. Thank you so much. It has been really fascinating and very amazing to hear all the learned panelists. In fact, everyone brought so much insight. In fact, I must say that I may not have acquired that much of insight in last 1 year. You all brought a different perspective, and all have been so useful. In fact, I must compliment you to bringing together such a celebrated minds who could address these issues so eloquently. So my heartiest congratulations to you and also to all the panelists. And also I must say that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which I mentioned to you when I spoke, was partnership for the goals, because these SDGs are a very mammoth targets. They are not going to be achieved by one entity or the other. Even the government alone itself cannot achieve it. So we need a very collective power which will be able to help us. And there is no other solution that I see beyond SDG also, by the way. If we are still not getting awakened by this pandemic that has really now made the relevance of SDG more than before, I think then we are committing another mistakes. So we have to realize that to make this planet more joyful, happier and sustainable, to my mind, the SDGs are the answer, and they are the key differentiator and game changer. Everyone, right from academic school to secondary to higher, primary to corporate to public, private sector, civil society, UN agencies, government, state government, everybody has to chip in. Only then we can make our responsibility and our task much bigger and better. So these are few my takes, and in fact, you will be happy to know the draft new education policy, which is awaiting the parliament nod, has already integrated SDG as part of the curriculum. So you will see now SDG will be taught right from schools in India, and they will be there up to the corporate level that all of us are talking about it. And even at UN Global Compact level, there is an initiative called PRME, Prime we call it, Principle of Responsible Management Education. We would like to teach sustainability or SDG or a responsible way of living to every students in universities, and you will be happy to know that membership of that in Prime is now over 6,000 institutions across the globe, and in India it has already got registration of 125 academic institutions. So buzz is there now, and now action is required. A lot more has been said. Everybody has to contribute, come together, and make it impactful. And the kind of webinar that you organize is one efforts towards this endeavor. And your own belief that SDG going forward will be a somewhat making the society more prosperous, happier, I think will help us. So we have to take this conversation across every section of society. I was talking about the SDG at the state level. So like Assam, Nagaland, Sikkim, and Gujarat, all states have come on board. We are about to head a state level engagement with the government of Uttarakhand. So it could just not happen because of this pandemic, but we will now catch up. So every state has to also contribute towards the entire machinery, because many times India being a country which is democracy led, and there are sometimes the governments are not as the government of the center at the level. So, but here on SDG, every party is committed. So that's a very good news, and I'm sure going forward, we as a community will be able to put our resources together and work together, and to that extent, the organization like you, Dr. Zaidi, you are championing needs to be applauded and also encouraged. Thank you very much to all of you once again.
Thank you very much, everybody. And this session will be live at 5 o'clock. We will send you 10-15 minutes before the link for sharing it if you want with somebody. So this will be live. So thank you very much. And
Dr. Zaidi, had we been in a hall, we would have clapped for each other. So I think that creates that vibrancy, that and claps for Dr. Zaidi and Mr. Kamal Singh and Dr. Andrew, as well as Dr. Swati, as well as Suruchi. I appreciate your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and all the best. Take care of yourself.
Okay. Yeah,
and in Uttarakhand, you said about a project, Kamalji, wherever you think I can be of some help and support.
Yeah, we will engage with you, and soon we will write to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.